One of the most enigmatic incidents in history took place deep within the Soviet Union more than 60 years ago. 9 young hikers vanished in the Ural Mountains, and none of them were ever found alive. The story only gets stranger. Some of the bodies were brutally mutilated, skulls crushed, ribs broken. Others seemed to have had their eyes removed, and one was even missing its tongue. To add to the mystery, several were found without any clothing, despite the bitter cold temperatures in the area reaching -30°C. Signs of violence surrounded the scene, but the cabin used as shelter was torn apart, leaving us wondering what or who was responsible for these horrors. It wasn't until nearly 60 years later that a possible explanation surfaced. Welcome to the mystery of Dyatlov Pass. Our story begins on a Friday, January 23, 1959. 10 friends gathered to start an icy adventure. They were students and colleagues from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, 8 men and 2 women. The expedition was led by Igor Dyatlov, whose name would later be given to the infamous location. The group included Lyudmila, Alexander, Zinaida, Rustem, Nikolai, Semyon, and 3 guys named Yuri. Their journey started in Yekaterinburg, in the Soviet Union's center-west, and from there they took a train to Ivdel. 2 days later, they hopped on a bus toward their final destination, Vijay, a small town at the foot of the mountains, where they rested before setting off on January 27th. Less than 24 hours into the trip, one of them, Yuri Yudin, developed severe sciatic nerve pain and had to abandon the expedition, unknowingly saving his life. After that, the remaining 9 pushed on. We know some of their days thanks to their journals. On January 28th, they noted the weather was around -8°C, and they spent the evening singing love songs by the fire. On January 29th, it was colder at -13°, with a weak wind and ice on the rivers. On January 30th, they tried to follow the Auspia River, but found it blocked by ice. They saw a Mansi hut, Mansi being a local indigenous people living in the northern Ural region. The name Jolat Siajal in their language means Mountain of Death, a foreboding name and, sadly, a chilling premonition. The group set up camp there, and January 31st's notes reveal worsening weather, strong wind, snow, and poor visibility making hiking extremely difficult. The last journal entry read, "Dinner is in the tent, nice and warm," but that warmth would soon be lost forever. On February 1st, no further entries were made. What happened after that night remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. Days passed with no word from the hikers. Communication was tough, and the group's scheduled return on February 12th never came. At first, no one worried too much. Harsh weather often delayed such expeditions, but as time went by, concern grew. Friends and family asked, where were they? On February 20th, the Polytechnic Institute sent out a search party. A week later, rescuers found their tent buried in snow, but inside, no bodies. Just some boots and personal items, including some meat left on plates, suggesting they had been about to eat when something forced them to flee. The tent was ripped open from the inside out, proving they escaped in a panic. Outside, frozen footprints showed some of them had left barefoot, trudging through the snow with no shoes. But the tracks vanished after a short distance. Where had they gone? The mystery deepened. The first bodies were found on February 27th, but more appeared only after winter ended in May, over 3 months of agonizing search. The recovered bodies were disturbing. Some were barefoot or in underwear despite freezing temperatures. Injuries were severe: broken ribs, fractured skulls, eyes missing, and one woman without a tongue. Theories exploded. According to the BBC, there are about 75 different explanations. Many speculated on the Soviet Union's secretive nature. Some believed a rocket test gone wrong or a KGB operation was to blame, especially since some clothing showed traces of radiation. Others thought the hikers were mistaken for prisoners escaping from gulags and were targeted. Even Boris Yeltsin, Russia's former president, suspected foul play by the government. Yet no evidence ever surfaced to confirm these suspicions. Other theories blamed the indigenous Mansi people who lived nearby. Some thought they might have attacked the hikers for trespassing on sacred land, but the Mansi were far from the site, had no violent history, and were thoroughly questioned. No proof of outsiders being at the scene ever appeared. Could it have been a murder within the group? The autopsies showed injuries far beyond human capability, ruling out a fight among themselves. Animals, bears, reindeer, even yetis, sometimes called the abominable snowman, were accused. But there's no proof yetis exist, and strange lights reported in the sky led others to suspect extraterrestrials. Paranormal explanations ran wild. However, natural explanations drew the most scientific attention. Hypotheses ranged from lightning storms to gravitational anomalies. One fascinating idea involved infrasound, low-frequency wind noises causing terror and panic, forcing the hikers into irrational flight. But none were definitively proven. Decades of theories came and went with no clear answer, until 2019, when the Russian government reopened the investigation for the 60th anniversary. A team of Swiss scientists from the Snow Simulation Laboratory at the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne conducted an extensive study. They arrived at the same conclusion as Russian authorities. The deaths were caused by a rare and powerful natural force, an avalanche. This answer may seem obvious now, but for years, no signs pointed to avalanches. The slope where the tent was pitched was thought too gentle, only about 23 degrees, while avalanches usually occur on slopes steeper than 30 degrees. But the avalanche was a specific type called a slab avalanche, triggered by strong winds piling fresh snow over a harder, icy layer. This built-up snowpack suddenly broke free, sweeping down the mountain with devastating force. New calculations by the Swiss scientists showed the slope was actually 28 degrees at the accident site, steeper than originally believed. The findings, published in the journal Nature, were made possible by advanced computer simulations and digital recreations inspired by scientific documentaries, like the film Frozen. The avalanche's power could explain the severe injuries. Some victims were crushed between the snow and their own skis, causing broken ribs and skull fractures. Missing body parts were likely scavenged by animals after death. As for those found without clothing, the leading theory is survivors stripped the clothes off the dead to keep warm. Radioactive traces may have come from their nuclear physics studies, not from any external contamination. Despite some loose ends, the avalanche hypothesis remains the most solid explanation, reminding us that nature can be far more dangerous than any conspiracy or supernatural story. After all, surviving in such a hostile environment is a tremendous challenge, and the Dyatlov Pass tragedy is a stark testament to that reality. But what about you? Which part of the Dyatlov Pass mystery still baffles you? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.